Hey, welcome back to Working Class Customs YouTube channel. Welcome back once again to Stable B. We're back in our favorite place. We're here to talk about some motorcycles today. Specifically, we're back with our trusty 2008 Suzuki GSXR 750 track bike. This is a track bike set up for track only. You can tell that because of the way that it is. Mostly all the random stickers on it and the fact that it doesn't have headlights. But today we're going to talk about a very special thing, which is going to be a clip-on angle. So there are a lot of different things you can adjust on a bike, and as you get aftermarket parts on your bike, you can adjust more and more. And it's all stuff that you can very easily do at home. One of those things is clip-on angle, and that will change the way that you ride the bike a little bit. And I think that it may have changed the way I have been riding this bike a little bit. So we're gonna find out today if my theory is correct, not by riding it, but at least a little bit, and I'll get into that story. Before I do that, please, if you're liking the content on this channel, or if it's your first time here and you already just love this video, click the subscribe button down below, throw a like on the video while you're down there. And while we're going through this, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Throw a comment down below or hit me up on Instagram at JKMotoPodcast. Yes, we also have a podcast, weekly podcast, every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. Ready to go for you for your morning commute of that day or whatever day that week that you want. It's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, let me know what questions you have as we go through here. Like I said, we'll talk about a couple different things that you can adjust on your motorcycle, but the big one that we're going to talk about today is clip-on angle and why that might be affecting you, or why it might be something you at least want to look into and see if it's affecting you. So stick around in the video, we'll get into it. Okay, so as I just mentioned, this is our Suzuki GSXR 750. It's an 08, it's pretty old. Not too many electronics on here. I think it's got some rider modes. There are other videos of this bike out on the channel, so go check them out. But today we're gonna talk about adjustability on motorcycles, and more specifically adjustable clip-ons and what adjusting those clip-ons could do for you. Before we get into that, I do wanna mention some things that you can adjust on your bikes to give you a more comfortable ride, but better set you up for a safer ride and a better ride out on the track. I do want to preface this with the fact that I am not a riding coach. I am definitely not a professional by any means. I'm not certified for really anything in life, but it's okay. We're here on YouTube where I can put out my opinions, and you can kind of take those opinions and other people's opinions and build your own toolbox of tools or array of different opinions, whatever you want to call it, and formulate what you like. I'm just here to kind of offer you up maybe a different take or something you haven't thought about before. So if you're already all over adjusting your stuff, I'm not going to tell you need to watch the rest of this video. I appreciate the view, but I understand if you want to click out and you're like, nope, I'm past this, Easton. I'm going to go check out something else. By all means, please. But on a motorcycle, you have several different things that are pretty easily adjustable for riding comfort, style, and everything else. And the biggest one is your rear sets down here. Maybe the camera can see them. On this bike specifically, it does come with a stock plate that is adjustable. You can move it up, down, forward, back, and all those things. But it's not like super adjustable, but you definitely have some movement in it. Some bikes come with those plates that are adjustable, others have fixed rear sets, and you would have to get aftermarket to do that. Aftermarket has a couple other benefits, like the pegs are easily replaceable. Generally, you can just get a replaceable peg because that's what's gonna break off in a crash, and they're easily movable and a little bit more adjustable and things like that. The next up would be your levers. So on any bike, you can definitely adjust the angle of the lever. That'd be your up and downs when you're grabbing it. You don't want to have to reach all the way up to grab your levers. You also don't have to like reach super far down to grab your levers. You want them somewhere nice where it's just, you put your fingers out and they're naturally there. You don't want to be getting stuck. In fact, one might argue this is almost too high, but I also don't like it rubbing on my bodywork. So you really want to find, the most important thing about today in general is just whatever's comfortable for you. And if you make an adjustment, make them little by little, go out and test them on the racetrack, come back in, be like, I didn't like that, or nope, that felt great. And then I'd say even if you make an adjustment, you're like, that felt amazing, go a little bit further in that direction. Go until it doesn't feel good anymore, and then bring it back, and you can really kind of dial that in. All of that within reason. You don't want to put your levers straight up and down because obviously you won't be able to grab them if you do that, but that's where they're at. So levers on just about any motorcycle, you can do that from factory, right? They're gonna be able to adjust up and down. If you get aftermarkets, you can get this kind of sweet adjustment. I don't know if you guys can catch that in the video or not, but I'll show you a little bit when we get up here. These are CRG RC2s, and they are adjustable in and out. And I like that a lot. You know, it lets you also, if you got shorter fingers, you don't want to have to reach super far out where it's like, I can't reach it. But you also, if you got longer fingers, you don't necessarily want it always just sitting right there. And so that gives you some nice adjustment there. Lets you put those levers where you want once you get aftermarket. The third thing, and the one that we're gonna focus on today, is your clip-on angle. So this is a clip-on. I'll show you guys a new view of this here in a second, but your clip-on, it replaces a handlebar on a sport bike, and they clip onto the fork, which is why they're called clip-ons. On the stock ones, sometimes you can have a little bit of adjustability. I do have a 2009 GSXR 750 right behind us. That's still a stock clip-on, so we'll be using that as kind of a reference today. They have a little bit of adjustability, but not as much as getting an aftermarket. An aftermarket, you can get ones with a rise or no rise or a negative rise. I don't know what you would call that. A dip, I don't know. But you can get them further up, down, further out, further back, and then you can also adjust that angle a lot more. You could literally ride with your handlebars out here, or you could ride with them in here like this. You do all those different things. So clip-on adjustability is great. The other thing that aftermarket clip-ons is gonna give you is that the bar that clamps into the clip-on clamps in. It's disconnected, it's two pieces. And so on a stock clip-on, like I said, I'll show you in a second, it's all one piece. They're a lot more likely to break, not more likely. But when they break, you gotta replace the whole thing. So I'll just show you right now. That'll be easier. All right, so these are our aftermarket. These are from Attack Performance specifically. As you can see, they clip on right here, and you can use this to adjust it this way. You use this side, and there should be another set of bolts. Nope, these are the sweet ones that swing. They have a, what is that called? A hinge on the other side. And so you can swing it back and forth like this. And you can also pull this bar further in, further out. Like I said, you can get these where they're further up, further down. You can also move these further up and down on the shocks a little bit if you want, on the forks, but that kind of like angle is what we're gonna focus on today. But as you can see, this bar just clamps in here. If we come look at our 09, which has a stock, it's hard to tell because it's covered up by the switch and all this stuff, but there's no brake. There's nothing that clamps in. This is all just one big long piece. And what that's gonna do is that when this breaks, it's gonna break either right here or more likely to break right here. That's a weak point usually in these things. They do that kind of on purpose, but when it breaks, you gotta replace the whole thing. With these aftermarket ones, this bar is likely to break right here. The clamps are built super strong, bars are built a little bit weaker, so they break on purpose. And a new set of bars is like 10, 20 bucks, maybe up to 50 if you're buying something super expensive, but that's that. And then just another look at this CRG RC2 adjustable. So you can see it just brings it in just a little bit. Some caution I would throw with that is if you have it all the way in, that's great, but you might have to adjust your clutch a little bit to make sure your clutch is still fully engaging. That shouldn't squeak that much, but it's okay. And then same thing with the brakes. This is not an RC2, but you can adjust with this little knob on the front here and pull it in and out further. But you will also kind of get a difference in pressure on your brake lever. So, but specifically what we're gonna talk about today is the angle of these clip-ons. So that'll be how far out they are or how far back in they are. We're gonna take a couple measurements of the clip-ons on this and a measurement of the clip-ons on that, and then talk to you about why. Actually, I'll tell that story right now, and then we'll take our measurements and maybe reset these ones a little bit. So, all right, so quick story time. The reason why we're doing this clip-on angle adjustment on this bike today is because this bike used to look a lot like this bike. Had all these stock parts all over. One of those was the stock clip-ons. I was out of the racetrack on this bike, like you do with a track bike. I was riding it around. I'd just done a pretty hot lap for me, nice and fast, and I was like, I can push that further. So I'm riding around, pushing it further and further and further, and one of the places I decided to push this even further was at the end of a long left-hand turn. I was like, I can get more gas, I can get more gas. And I kept giving it more gas and more lean angle as I was going through this turn. Eventually the rear tire said, that's all 100 points right there. You're not good for that, and it wiped me out. So a nice little low side, bike took off across the track, hit the grass, did a flip or two, I don't know. I was also in the grass sliding, but the clip-ons broke. So, got the bike back in at lunchtime. I took everything apart, took an assessment of what I needed to replace. One of those was obviously clip-ons, so I went and got an aftermarket set of clip-ons. When those were there, I didn't have much of a reference with where my old ones were. And so I set them even on both sides, but just kind of set them where I thought, yep, that looks pretty comfy. And it was pretty comfy. I still enjoy riding the bike, but since then I've kind of found that I don't get off the bike as far as I used to. And I've wondered if possibly my arms are too far out. And so when you're leaning over, if your arm's all the way out there holding onto that clip-on, it's gonna get stretched and eventually you're gonna be at a full lock on your arm and you can't move any further. So if you bring your clip-on in a little bit, you can move your whole body that much further off the bike and you can get further off the bike. So I'm wondering if that's possibly what's been happening. Conveniently now, we have a stock 2009 GSXR 750 and I know where my clip-ons were set before because there's a little stop in these things. So your top of your triple clamp has a ridge in it and there's a little post that goes up, and I won't show you guys that today because I don't want to have to reset these. Maybe we will. I'll pull it apart. I'll show you guys today. I'll reset them afterward. But there's a little post in there that sticks up, so you can only stick them out so far and then they run into that. The aftermarket ones don't come with those posts. They have full maneuverability. So I'm wondering if I set set it a little bit further out than what I would have had before, and that's caused me to not be as comfortable and not being able to get as far off the side of the bike. So we're gonna measure this one first, see where it's at, and then measure these. We'll use the same point, and then we'll see if we need to adjust it. Please note, there are some sweet tools out there built by a company called Motion Pro, and I'm sure other companies have them also, where you can, it's like an angle finder, and you set it up on the bars here, and it's great because it sets it perfect. I don't have one of those tools. I am looking into getting one, but I didn't want to spend the money on it because once you set these where you want them, you're usually pretty good. Unless you're out there chasing, you know, tenths or hundredths of a second, you don't often have to reset them a whole bunch. But it is a good tool. I do want to get one eventually, I just haven't yet. So today we're going to use our trusty tape measure. And for those of you that know, if I've told you a tape measure isn't worth it before, don't worry about it too much. Anyway, tape measures have this movement in them. They're not super accurate. So we're just gonna make sure that's fully stretched out, and then we'll have the same distance on both sides. We'll be good to go. That's really what we're worried about today, is making sure the distance on both of these is the same, i.e. it's the same angle across, so you have an even wear. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick a center point at the back of the bike. Right in the center of the seat here, conveniently, there's a nice stitch, and I'm gonna take my tape measure from back there out to the end of the bar and measure what that distance is. The question now is, are they both maxed out, which they definitely are with that post that I was telling you guys about earlier. So we're gonna make sure that these are centered and push them a little bit. This one isn't on a stand, which that can help a lot. There we go. Now we have this at about 35 3/4. Bring it to the other side, and 35 3/4. So we have an even on both sides. They should be even unless these forks aren't straight, which is definitely possible, which is also why I don't really have that other tool just yet, because a lot of these things on these older bikes that could have been through some pain and suffering aren't always super accurate anyway. So anyway, if you have one that's set up, you want to make sure it's straightened out first. Having it on a stand helps that out quite a bit compared to up here like this. But we have it even on both sides. We're going to call it 35 3/4. That makes sense. They should be even out because, like I said, they're both bottomed, or not bottomed, but backed out all the way, i.e. they're as wide as they can get with the post that I'll show you guys in a little bit. So now we're going to go measure the other bike, adjust the camera so you guys can see that. And this one is awkward because the aftermarket race fairings and everything else make it really weird. The fairings aren't as straight as the frame, and so everything is usually a little off. But once again, we're gonna come to center here, bring it right in on the center point, boom, come out. That's what I was afraid of. I made an excuse in my head and it didn't work that well. We'll get that straightened out just a little more. Come to center. Dead on the money at 35. And that's saying 35 1/2, which would mean that that's still not straight, which makes a little bit of sense. Also could be that they're not even. Yep, that's exactly where it was before. 35 1/2 and about 35 1/2. So we said 35 3/4 and 35 1/2, which means that my theory might not actually be correct, and they could be pretty much exactly the same as the other ones. So how interesting that is. Okay, so as you just saw, my theory might have been proved incorrect, and I'm gonna keep this in this video because in my head, what I thought, so my clip-ons are far out. As you lean off the bike, you're gonna get stretched. So if you bring your clip-on in a little bit, you should be able to lean a little bit further, get further off the bike more comfortably. That's what I thought. That's what I'm still kind of thinking, but I know for a fact that my clip-ons before were set at that angle that is currently on that bike over there. I know they were maxed out on that post, that I will still show you here in a little bit. With this being almost a 1/2 inch further in on both sides, what we're gonna do right now is move it out a 1/2 inch on both sides. We're gonna move it out to where that one was, because that's what I had before. That's where I felt the most comfortable on the bike. All this could just be me making things up in my head. It could be for crashing. It could be a lot of different things that are causing that, but I'm gonna make that adjustment. We're gonna go out and do a track day, and then we'll come and do a recap afterward and see how it feels, see if it made a difference. So walk you through adjusting this real quick. It can be a little bit of a pain sometimes because anyway, you get stuck and yeah. So I'll walk you through a couple little tricks and tips that I have. We'll get these moved out, and we'll see if that makes a difference. And if it makes a difference and I feel a lot better, we'll let you know. If it makes a difference and I feel a lot worse, we'll adjust it back in. That's the great thing about adjustable parts on your bike, is that you can make those small adjustments in your pits or at home in your garage in between track days or races, and you can see those differences on your own. So the important thing that I will say is like keeping track of the differences that you make and not making a bunch of big changes all at once. So if I'm changing clip-on angle, I probably want to leave my rear sets alone. If I'm changing rear sets, I want to leave my clip-ons alone. If I'm changing my levers are a little bit different because it's really just comfortability for grabbing, and that brake is the important one. So I would say you could change your levers while changing other things, but like if you're changing your tire, I'd say I went from a Dunlop super soft to a Pirelli hard tire, and I'm changing pressure like crazy. I don't want to also then go change my clip-on angle and be like, wow, this bike feels way more amazing. It must be because of the clip-ons, when it could have been the tire, if that makes sense. So we'll get these adjusted back out, just about a ½ inch on both sides. We'll see how it feels at our next track day. Man, that's a pretty sweet point of view. What are you looking, 5 mils? All right, so we're gonna grab some tools, mostly just one tool, just gonna be a 5mm Allen. Since I don't trust myself, we're gonna grab a 6 also. And we're also gonna grab an actual Allen. Okay, it is definitely 5. Set our 5 up here. I will say the nice thing about a track bike, I don't have to worry about the paint. So before you light me up in the comments about me not caring about my paint, well, it's a track bike. So I'll tell you, the paint doesn't look good anyway. And you can always wrap it later on. All right, so when you're adjusting your clip-on angle, you wanna make sure you're messing with the right bolts, doing the right thing. It's only gonna be these 2 for this one. Sometimes they have a clamp on both sides. You gotta loosen up both sides. So what I'm gonna do is super loosen one of these. So I'm not worried about it. There are 2 that should keep this on there nice and tight. Get that pretty loose to where I know this is gonna move pretty easily. And then I'll go down to the one underneath it and only loosen that one just enough to start moving this, but I wanna keep it tight as much as possible so that when I'm moving it, it doesn't just go willy-nilly wherever I want. So you just need it loose enough that you can start to move the clip-on. You don't want to go any further than that. You're only sliding it around, you're not pulling the whole thing off. If you have that Motion Pro tool where you're looking at getting it, or you're like, I don't like this whole tape measure thing, the Motion Pro tool is definitely great. It's good. So there you can see we can move it, but it's not moving on its own. What we're also gonna do is make sure they're nice and snug up against the top. So you might have to wiggle back and forth a good bit. We said we're looking for 35 3/4. Bring it up nice and snug. And then I think even with the camera there, yep, be good to go. So there's 36. So I'm gonna bring that in just a little bit. The only thing that could really stop you from going super crazy is 35 1/2. It's literally like not that much at all. I would say watch your clutch cable. Basically, once you're done making your adjustment, that's gonna be 35 3/4, perfect right there. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten that in. But once you're done making your adjustment, you're gonna check everything else. Check your brake lines, check your throttle cable, check your clutch cable. Make sure, let's see, righty, gonna go that way. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Once you tighten these back down, I've done it before. I'm like, yep, all right, we're good to go. And then I loosen it and it just falls and you gotta restart, and it's really, really annoying. And we'll put some torque on this later once I'm satisfied with both sides being adjusted where they need to be. I won't show that on camera, but don't worry, I do torque everything. I do think the torque specs are very important. One, tighten back up, and then we'll go do the other side. But yeah, your clutch cable, if you're moving this way out or way in, your clutch cable could get, stretched a little bit. So you wanna check and make sure that's still adjusted how you want it. Same thing with throttle cables. I'd say your brake lines, you should be good, but you just wanna look over everything, make sure that everything's good to go. So that's gonna take care of that side. Sounds like it's trying to storm outside, but it's probably not actually storming. We'll come grab this side now. Same story as the other. It's good and loosened. Do the bottom now. Okay, that should start moving. Yep, sure enough. Gonna snug this one up against the top also. Okay, we're looking for 35 3/4. Same thing as the other side. Come back to our center point, bring it out. Bring that in just a little bit. It's gonna be way too much. Like I said, it only takes a little bit. That's actually really close. It's right back where we started. There we go, 35 3/4. So get those snugged up. And like I said, I'll torque them down off camera, so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me torque something. You can absolutely do what I do and wait till you wreck your bike for the first time and then get aftermarket clip-ons, or if you want to make it even easier in case there's not a parts guy there or whatever else might be the problem, generally clip-ons are like pretty reasonably universal between bikes, but you can go ahead and have a set on hand, or just go ahead and put a set on your bike and then have an extra set of bars on hand. So that extra set of bars makes it a lot easier if you go down, get your bike back, throw the new bar in, set it where you want it, and head on about your day and keep riding. So aftermarket clip-ons are sweet for that. They make recovery from a wreck a lot quicker and a lot easier. So I recommend that. And then also this adjustability, they are a lot more adjustable, so you can go kind of any direction with them. Anyway, hopefully this kind of showed you a little bit about clip-ons, angle adjustment, made you think at least a little bit about how that could change the way you're riding the bike, and give you some ideas of, you know, once you get aftermarket clip-ons, or if you already have them, maybe going and taking a look at it and seeing what they look like, and seeing if a little small change like that could affect your riding style. So recommend making small changes or relatively big changes, and then seeing how it feels, coming back, jotting down a note on it real quick, you know, measure where you had it, write that down, go ride it. It felt like this, write that down, adjust it back to a different spot or back to where it was, be like, this feels like this. And you can kind of figure out exactly where you want it, and then you know just about any bike that you're on, or at least if you ride that bike, you know where you like your clip-ons. So I'll show you guys that post on that other stock clip-on, and then we'll close out the video. So essentially this is our stock clip-on. I just loosened this up and brought it down. If you look right there, there's your little post, and that sits up in a hole. Actually, there's a perfect hole for that to sit in. Yeah, so there's a little hole that pretty much like sticks that in that spot, so it can't move very far or really at all. You'll see the same thing over on this bike. If you look up in here, here's your little post, and there's actually a screw on this one up underneath there. So again, you can't adjust these clip-ons at all. The aftermarket are literally just a clamp, and so you can move them. You could literally have these things out here if you wanted. I don't recommend that. All right, so once again, just final shot. That was our video on clip-ons and clip-on angles and small adjustments on your bike. So I'm not gonna go through every small adjustment because you can kind of figure the other ones out. That's something that I wanted to try out at my next track day. I'll go try it out, and like I said, I'll let you guys know when we get back to Stable B again, see how that change affected our riding and see if it made a positive or negative difference, and if we made any other adjustments, I'll let you know. So stick around on the channel so you can get that answer, but hopefully you learned something, or at least, like I said, had a new thought of like, oh, maybe I should go try adjusting some other parameter on my bike. Small changes can make big differences in the way that you ride. So I definitely recommend at least thinking about it, looking into it. And this was a good way, I think, to set the angle with minimal tools. Obviously, if you can go get yourself the Motion Pro awesome angle adjuster tool, someone give me the name down in the comments, go pick that up. It'll make it a lot easier. You don't have to worry about making sure your bars are straight or anything like that, because it sits across the top, so you don't have to worry about it as much. But if you got a little bit of finesse and a tape measure, you can go a long way and make some pretty good adjustments that way. So hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, please subscribe to the channel, throw a like on the video, and we'll see you guys in next week's video.